Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, one last thought on college baseball, and then we'll move on to the basketball and football stuff. But first of all, can you forgive me? I am really into this college baseball tournament. I am really enjoying it. I promise we will not talk more college baseball than we do on this show. But just give me today to enjoy college baseball and talk about it, because I have one more thought before we wrap. And again, we'll get to basketball, we will get to NBA draft stuff, and then we'll wrap this show. And I promise, the next couple shows we'll get back on track with the stuff that we normally talk about, whether it's NFL, college football, college basketball, whatever. But when I think about college baseball, and I think about college baseball in just the landscape of society in general, over the last couple days, I couldn't help but think one thing, and again, about college baseball, but really about where we are as a society. And as a society, I really don't think there's all that much that's really underrated at this point, right? Because, if it's underrated, people immediately start talking about it, and then it becomes properly rated, and then generally probably a little bit overrated. If there's a great show on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or Amazon Plus or whatever, you hear about it, then somebody else hears about it, then everybody hears about it, and then by the time you get to it, this is the great show that everybody's talking about. It was so underrated that it became properly rated, that it became overrated. Because that's the world that we live in. We live in a world, and I think I don't even know, all these shows run together. But we live in a world where if you want literally any meal at any point, you could just get it. It's called Uber Eats. I want Chinese food now. I want pizza for dinner. I want a salad for breakfast, which is kind of a weird breakfast request, but whatever. You get it. And so we live in a world where we have so much of everything all the time coming at us that it's impossible for anything to be underrated. And I think it's kind of the same in sports, right? I mean, college football, I don't even think I'm that old. But I remember days where there was one game on at 3:30 and one game on at 7:30. And to quote my old girlfriend that was a teacher, you get what you get and you don't get upset. If you're a Tennessee fan and you get stuck with Florida State, you're stuck with Florida State. Well, now think about the world that we live in sports, where you literally get any game you want at any given time that you want. You're a college football fan. You turn on that TV at noon Eastern on a Saturday in September, October. You're getting a game on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, SEC Network, Big Ten, Fox, FS1, CBS, NBC, CBS Sportsnet. I just listed 10 networks off the top of my head that are going to have Big Ten Network, I think I didn't even say. 10, 11 networks at any time that have any game that you want, and it's the same with pretty much everything in sports. You a Kentucky basketball fan? You live in Seattle? You don't have to live in Kentucky to watch every Kentucky basketball game. You can live in Seattle, never miss a minute. You can live in Kentucky and be a Seattle Mariners fan and never miss a pitch of the Mariners. It's unbelievable the world that we live in. And so many of you are probably sitting here saying, what does this have to do with college baseball? And it's that I really do think that college baseball just might be the only sport in the American lexicon as we speak that remains underrated, although I do believe that it is becoming more mainstream by the year, and I do believe that this was the year that I think it kind of sort of went mainstream, but I still believe that this is an incredibly underrated sport. Now, to be clear, I understand where it fits in the hierarchy of the sports landscape, and I understand that in the same way that I love college basketball, yes, I'm switching to basketball now, I understand that college basketball is never going to be super mainstream. I understand I'm never going to turn on First Take and Stephen A. Smith, and I think we were talking about this last week with Phil Elson. Stephen A. Smith's never going to lead First Take with, Duke beat Georgia Tech. Let's talk about it. And it's the same with college baseball. I understand that in the grand scheme of things, college baseball is still very, 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 very niche, but I do think it is growing a little bit. But I think that's okay. It's funny, right? I go back to a conversation I had with Colin Cowherd. I was on his podcast during the NCAA tournament, and we were talking about the NCAA tournament. This is the basketball tournament I'm talking about now. And I remember talking to Colin, and I said, Colin, I think you like college basketball more than you're letting on here, man. And he goes, oh, I love college basketball. He goes, I can't talk about it every day because the NFL and the NBA matter more. And he goes, but just because I don't talk college basketball every day doesn't mean that especially the NCAA tournament isn't an incredible event for college basketball. And he said something that stuck with me, and he said something that I've thought of the last couple weeks when it comes to college baseball. What he said was, and I love this quote, he said, everything is not everything. And what that means is that not everything is for everyone at every exact moment, right? The example that he used, he said, New Orleans is a beautiful city. I wouldn't want to live there 365 days a year, and this is no disrespect to the people in New Orleans, but for like 2 weeks a year in Mardi Gras, it is the place to be. It is the center of the universe. It is awesome. It's the same with college basketball during the NCAA tournament. No, most people aren't studying Iowa film on a Tuesday night in June. But it doesn't mean for 3 weeks in the NCAA tournament it's not the greatest sporting event going. And I do kind of wonder if we're starting to get there with college baseball. First of all, I would say this. I was in Vegas last weekend, and I know I talked about it with Phil Elson last week. College baseball, especially at tournament time, is an imminently watchable sport. It was mind-boggling to me, and I don't think I just ever really realized it. It was mind-boggling to me. The game started at 11 a.m. Eastern, so that's 8 a.m. Pacific, and they basically go all day. It's got an NCAA tournament basketball vibe where it's just one game after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, where you're watching and you're watching and you're watching, and one game ends and it automatically goes to the next one, and this game ends in the craziest fashion ever, and it could never get better. And then it does it. You're like, how? And then all of a sudden you look up, and you're like, I've been in front of the TV for 12 hours. Like that's college baseball. That was me in the sports book the other night. And what's great about it is it's all hours of the day. The games are going. The games are competitive. The games are exciting. They start early. They bleed one into another, a lot like the NCAA basketball tournament. And you look up and you're like, what just happened? I mean, it blew me away. I was in the sports book during Game 2 of the NBA Finals. So this was last Sunday, not yesterday, but 2 Sundays ago. That game ends at about 10:30 Eastern. There are still 3 college baseball games going on. Stanford was still playing, Oregon State was still playing, and I forget who else was still playing. And so you have the games going all day, and then that Monday, I will say this, that Monday of the college baseball regionals, so this was, again, not today, obviously, but last Monday, when you had 8-9 games fighting to go to 8-9 games with the winners going to the super regionals, I'll tell you, I thought that was about as exciting of a day in sports as we've had in a long time. And I'll also say this. I do think that was the first time that I really felt like college baseball kind of went mainstream. And I know some of you probably disagree. I've been watching college baseball for 30 years, and Torres, just because you got into it doesn't mean that we haven't been watching all along. But last Monday was the first day that I just felt like, man, people are really invested in this sport. It wasn't just a couple SEC teams, but you go back to last Monday. Think about that UConn-Maryland game, that crazy play at first base. That was like a mainstream talking point the next day. I was turning on national sports talk radio. One of the big Barstool shows was talking about it. It was a crazy play that everybody was talking about, and it came from a UConn-Maryland baseball game. The Stanford finish was unbelievable last Monday night. 3 straight runs to advance to the Super Regionals. 3 runs scored in the bottom of the ninth. They were down, I think, 4-2. They win 5-4. They were down 3-1 and win 4-3. That Oklahoma State-Arkansas game was crazy. And it really felt like last Monday was the first time that college baseball was really mainstream. There was no NBA Finals. I think there was pretty limited NHL hockey. And it just felt like, man, everybody is watching college baseball. Everybody's having a great time. And the one thing also that I think makes it underrated is the environments. I mean, imagine if the NCAA basketball tournament, if instead of playing in these sterile, boring NBA arenas in wherever, Portland and Spokane and Sacramento and whatever, imagine if we were playing them on home courts. Imagine if we were playing NCAA tournament games at Cameron Indoor or the Dean Dome or Bud Walton or Rupp Arena or the Yum Center or FedEx Forum or wherever. Well, that's what you get with college baseball. I mean, some of these environments have been incredible. The Maryland, I didn't even know, I know this is cliche, I didn't even know Maryland played baseball. And their regional game against UConn was unbelievable. Tennessee was awesome this week. I know it didn't work out, but that site was awesome. That Oklahoma State regional where Arkansas went in and won, that was unbelievable too. And so I just bring it up to say, I don't want to belabor the point, but you take the urgency of the NCAA tournament. You take the nature of the schedule. You take the home field advantage for the higher ranked teams. I think this sport is only going to continue to blow up. By the way, this all obviously continued this weekend at the Super Regionals in Chapel Hill and Oregon State and wherever, whatever, Tennessee, Knoxville, Southern Miss. I think it's only going to continue to grow. First of all, I had a couple of you reach out and say, Torres, you got to run a college baseball bracket next year. And I think as this thing continues to grow, if we can get a bracket going, as gambling picks up, I think this sport is going to continue to be mainstream. Because here's the thing, right? What makes March Madness March Madness? There's really not that much going on. NFL season's done. NFL playoffs are done. Draft season hasn't started up yet. The NBA playoffs haven't started up yet. That's part of what makes March Madness March Madness. And I think we can get there with college baseball because outside of a couple nights a year in June, there isn't all that much going on in sports. And so I'm done talking college baseball, even though I love this freaking sport. But I'll just tell you, this year, I really felt like more than any other, it's starting to get mainstream. And more than any other year, I believe that college baseball, because of the structure, because of the way it's set up, like college basketball, weekends, home venues, that's not like college basketball. But you get the point. The schedule, all day, every day, one game bleeds into another. I believe this sport is the most underrated sport in American sports, and I believe it's only going to